Rise up!
This is the Rise Up See Red podcast, all about the Arizona Cardinals and the NFL, featuring insider and outsider perspectives. Enjoy the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. Now here are your hosts, Jess Root and Seth Cox.
Arizona Cardinals fans, and welcome to the latest edition of the Rise Up See Red podcast, the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. I'm your host, Jess Root from CardsWire.com, USA Today's NFL Wire site, covering, of course, your Arizona Cardinals in episode 754. Joining me in this episode is almost always the case. Seth Cox from RevengeOfTheBirds.com, SB Nation's Arizona Cardinals site, as we move to another off-season show that we have as we creep towards free agency. Seth, the timing of our show dropping made it sound a little late, but we totally called the feeling we got when it came to the defensive coordinator because last week we talked about Carl Scott, and then it was like that morning things came down, but we said, the longer this goes it feels like the inevitability is that they're just going to retain Nick Rallis. And lo and behold, Nick Rallis returns as the defensive coordinator. And while in some ways it kind of makes sense, is there really any excuse that is there any real good, I don't think there's a good argument to say why this is a good idea.
Yeah, and you and I were talking about it a little bit. The hard part is you did so much. You did so much just to place blame other places, right? It was Drew Petzing. Oh, then it was Jonathan Gannon, and it was Kyler Murray. Oh, it was this, it was that, it was injuries. Like all of that was done. And then you talk about like, oh, why did Jacoby Brissett not win more games? He put up all of those. He put up all
passes
those
and yards
numbers, but he didn't really succeed in any way. Well, the defense was just terrible, and you're like, okay, so wouldn't like that make sense that you go, okay, well, let's not bring back that defense coordinator, right? Like, I don't know, man. It's wild to me. It's wild to bring that in. Like, I just don't understand it. And by the way, this isn't an anti-Nick Rallis thing. I think you and I have talked about like, hey, I wouldn't hate seeing him without the shackles of Jonathan Gannon, but you can't do that with a brand new head coach, especially a head coach that put up like 90 points on him in 2 games.
Yes, and it's an interesting concept. Now, Rallis for some reason still gets, like, he has some respect from around the league as a bright young defensive play caller, and there is some creativity to some of the stuff that he does. But it is an interesting thing when you look at it, especially again, we were talking about before the show when it comes to the balance, okay, the quarterback position and the defense. And so while we know that Kyler Murray and Drew Petzing and Jonathan Gannon were scapegoated, the same time people defend Jacoby Brissett as in his effectiveness by saying, well, look at that defense. So we say Brissett's not the answer. Like, he's not bad, but he's no answer for winning football games. He went 1-11. He's gone 2-15. He's 20-45 in his career. And then, but they say, well, look, he put up those numbers. Yeah. And we're saying because of the defense. it doesn't make sense to both bring back the same quarterback and the same defensive coordinator when we're saying that the results were one or the other. Now, ultimately, I don't think we're going to see Jacoby Brissett or Kyler Murray this coming season. And so it's interesting what the Cardinals valued with this. Now, do we know that Nick Rallis was their first choice? We know he was not, because of the report that came out where the Cardinals offered Gus Bradley more money and then the defensive play calling ability. And he said, no, thank you. Let me go coach with my buddy Robbie over in Tennessee and go from there. So it's interesting because experienced play calling was kind of what they said in reports was a priority, or it was high on their list. They wanted an experienced play caller, and which basically didn't make sense with the guys that they interviewed, because they wanted Bradley. There was, I don't know if they actually ever did interview Wink Martindale, because it was just at the beginning. It was just a name to watch. I don't remember ever hearing actual interview. And then and other than Rallis, and then everyone else was new. If being having had experience calling a defense was a priority, why did they interview so many guys that hadn't done that? Bobby Pleasant, Carl Scott, all of these. Why were they interviewing guys who didn't have the experience to do it?
Yeah, Gus was really the only guy, right? And one of the things you and I talked a little bit about, and this was early on in the process, was wouldn't it have, like, again, I don't think we would have been like, oh, this is great, but wouldn't it have made sense if they hired Vance Joseph and then they retained Nick Rallis, right? Like, you got an experienced, successful defensive coordinator with a
continuity.
With continuity, with a guy that hasn't done it before, or that technically has done it before, but hasn't really done it at a high level. I mean, none of his defenses ranked inside the top 20 in the NFL ever. So, like,
25th, 21st, and 27th in yards allowed in 3 seasons. And while 2024, it was 15th in points, the 31st and 29th in points allowed in 2023 and 2025. So, yeah.
Good. And so that's the thing, is like that I could get a little bit, but this screams, and I think it was Blake Murphy, and but if it was Johnny, shout out either one of them. I know it wasn't you and I know it wasn't me, but it was basically our response was, well, there's your scapegoat for next year, right? Like,
yes.
So you look at it and you go, okay, Rallis gets the boot. You get you get a top 3 pick yet again, and now you run it back in terms of you have LaFleur, you have so that'll be what
can then go hire his guy Aubrey Pleasant. Though interestingly enough, that Pleasant didn't get any job anywhere.
Yeah, super interesting on that, right? Carl Scott stayed. Like, nothing really happened with the guys that weren't coordinators not getting a coordinator
decided to go back to Houston.
And we can say, rumors, and the rumors are that they were told no by Vasso and Pleasant. That was that's the rumor. Now we have no way of verifying it whatsoever. But the rumor.
So the Cardinals were told no by Bradley, no by Vasso, perhaps no by Pleasant. Oh, well, this has been a great hiring cycle.
But they were also basically told no by Robert Saleh too, right? Like, they were told no by Jeff Hafley, right? Like, so So like those guys all told them no as well, just in different ways, because
They would have been running the defense, and they didn't want to be the head coach here. So
yeah. So we'll see what happens, but yeah, man. I mean, well, this is just interesting, and we just found out, just came out about an hour ago, that they're going to introduce Michael Gabriel, the special teams coordinator, who had some time crossover with Mike with the Jets, but has been with the New York Giants the last couple of seasons, and then Nathaniel Hackett, who has obviously a close relationship with Mike LaFleur, and then a reintroduction of defense coordinator Nick Rallis. So, yeah, man, I mean, I don't think anybody's going to say this was the sexiest hiring cycle ever, but it's done. There's really nothing left to do except watch and see how it plays out, because we can't get. I mean, we have our opinions, right? But like we've heard before, everybody has those, and they stink, and so on and so forth. And so we'll see how it plays out here, because I think as of right now, everybody that was very excited about the Mike LaFleur hire seems much less excited after the last 2 weeks and the coordinators coming in.
Yeah. And it's the one thing that is different this year, and I guess it was because all of their guys, all of their coordinators have held those positions before. So that's different than this time around. Now, Jonathan Gannon's staff almost exclusively. Now, Ben Steele, I think, had stuck around. Obviously, Jeff Rogers had been there, but the vast majority of their staff were holding their new positions for the first time. And this time, all their coordinators have been coordinators before. Obviously, Rallis has been the defensive coordinator. Hackett's been a head coach and an offensive coordinator, and Gabriel has been a special teams coordinator for the last 2 years for the Giants. And so we are seeing some assistants that are holding NFL jobs for the first time, or guys that are holding these positions. And I think that's, strategically, that's not a bad way to go. So you've got a rookie head coach with coordinators who have been those coordinators before, and then a blend of assistants who are being promoted or doing in the NFL stuff for the first time. So it's not a bad strategy. And there is one thing that makes our life, I think, a little bit easier when it comes to seeing Nick Rallis return as defensive coordinator, is knowing the type of players that they have targeted. It helps us know what types of players we can kind of keep an eye on, because offensively, we're going to have to, okay, what types of players are they looking for on offense? What type of offensive line, what running backs, what type of slot receiver, those type of things are going to look different this year, philosophically. But defensively, by retaining Rallis, we can kind of look at the personnel and go, okay, who are they going to bring back, and who are the types of players that will fit, because they'll still align with the type of free agent and draft moves that they've done. And so I think that will be one thing that's interesting.
Yeah, and we'll see how it changes now, again, that there's no Jonathan Gannon. Like, was Gannon really instrumental in the personnel decisions and things like that, or was that a Rallis decision? Like, it'll be interesting just to see how this all unfolds. But yeah, I'm super interested to see how the offseason in general goes, more than anything.
Yeah. Did you see now there were some guys on the Cardinals who took the news well. Mac Wilson was like, we're doing it again. Did you see Max Melton's Instagram story?
Yeah, not super happy, and so that goes back to the question, right? The question really is, who who was making those decisions. So Melton seems to think it was Rallis, where a lot of people thought it was more Jonathan Gannon. So it seems like to Max Melton, this was a Rallis decision, and he's not exactly excited about it.
Oh, it could be 100% some other reason why he. Well, the story was it was a clip of something that they're not this guy again, and with some obscenities. So, well, that was funny. We're like, oh, the timing of it. And he'll have to compete, and maybe he's one of those guys that gets traded in this offseason, something we can talk about later. But Rallis, it is that's the one thing that's going to be a little bit of exciting is how different will Rallis be philosophically under a different head coach, because Rallis was always Gannon's guy, because Gannon was a guy like he's his guy. And is he going to grow and do things any differently, or will he be a Gannon clone, or will he be able to sort of establish his own style and philosophy?
And I think that's going to be really interesting to see if he has a different style, different identity than what we've seen.
Because, at least in this case, that we did, like, if we go 3 years ago, the one thing that was surprising was the basic alignment, and because every defense that Gannon had coordinated or had been a part of was an even front. They were 4-3. Now they did a lot more. They did some 5-man fronts in which basically kind of looks like a 3-4. But personnel wise, Gannon was a Zimmer guy. They ran 4-3, and Rallis, like his like what he aligns is very much kind of Vic Fangio-ish in that sense. Not the same style, but in terms of kind of the roles that they have up front, it's much more Fangio. Not so much Vance Joseph, Wade Phillips, but it's more Vic Fangio. And that was one of the things that we were very surprised about, is that they kept that 3-4 alignment. And I know that the alignment is just, but it does impact personnel in some ways. And so it'll be interesting, is like if they were willing to, if he was aligning things that way instead of Gannon, what's going to change this time around?
Yeah, super interesting. And the thing with Rallis was we saw, and I think we've seen it a lot, in that when guys are forced to be creative, like what we saw with Rallis in year 1 and 2, we see what they're capable of. Where when we saw look at all the talent that we've added, that as much as we like a lot of the guys they brought in, right? Like I don't want it to be like, oh, these guys all sucked. I think that gets misconstrued when I say this, but they really pulled back on their creativity, and they went more to the Jonathan Gannon with the Eagles defense, which is, hey, rush the passer with 4, play great coverage with 7, and win. And it's like, yeah, that only works when you have multiple Pro Bowler All Pros in your front 7, right? Like, what are we doing here, people? So it'll be interesting to see how it all opens up. But I want to see creative Nick Rallis back. And if we don't get that, then it's just unfortunate that he, was never that guy, and the facade was more the creativity as opposed to what he was with Jonathan Gannon, right?
Yeah. Coming up next on the Rise of Sierra podcast, Best Our Cardinals Talk on the Web, we will dive into the defensive side of the ball. Now that we've got Rallis back, what are those positional needs on defense? That's coming up next on Rise of Red. We're back on the Rise of Sierra podcast, Best Our Cardinals Talk on the Web. We're going to dive into I guess we'll do defense and special teams, the positions of need. What do they need at each group? And this becomes slightly clearer now that we know the system. But let's dive in with the defensive line. There is, they have a lot of returning guys. So you've got technically Dalvin Tomlinson's coming back. So Calais Campbell, LJ Collier, PJ Mustipher are the free agents, which you look at, but they've got Darius Robinson, you've got Walter Nolan. And so I guess, and technically Bilal Nichols is under contract. Do we expect him to be cut? What do they need on the defensive interior when it comes to this offseason?
Well, you look at it, like you said, you technically could roll out this year.
Mustipher will likely be. He's exclusive, right? So he'll be tendered. He'll be back, right, at least in camp.
You could technically roll out Walter Nolan. Well, we still don't know the severity of his injury, but we're going with Walter Nolan, Darius Robinson, Dalvin Tomlinson with backups of Dante Stills, and Bilal Nichols. And then if you let Nichols walk, like you said, you would just bring Mustipher back. So you definitely still need a piece. You need a piece, but it's not something that is urgent, right? Like you don't need a guy that's going to be the best player on the defensive line immediately. But you need depth. You need a guy that can give you 30% of snaps and then go from there.
It would be nice too, especially if they end up moving on from Dalvin Tomlinson, who could be a cap casualty, because he was largely unproductive last season.
Yep.
If Robinson and Nolan hold their own, you've got your guys. But wouldn't it make sense to prioritize someone in the Bilal Nichols to Justin Jones range of type player, albeit not those particular players? If that makes sense. Like you don't need to go out and get a high-priced defensive lineman.
No, but you need a guy like
starting caliber.
Yeah. You need a guy that gives you the flexibility. Like if he's not, if a healthy Robinson and Nolan beat him out, you're not going to go, oh crap. You're going to be like, okay, that's fine. Like you're not worried about it at all. Whereas you don't need it to be anything more than that. And we'll see how that goes. But yeah, it's definitely a need. But like in the list of needs, looking at this, list overall, it's probably like a tier 3 need right now.
Yeah. And we go to edge. Okay, we've got Josh Sweat, solid year, completely nothing in the fourth quarter of games, but man, do they need help at the edge, because Zaven gave them nothing. Baron Browning gave them nothing. Jordan Birch gave them nothing. Bijo Jolari basically gave them nothing. So the edge once again becomes like can you really roll it back with that same group? I mean, Baron and Zaven both are under contract. Birch will be a second-year player. Can you really expect this team to be any better defensively and have those same 4 guys as your edge guys?
Yeah, and that's what the problem is obviously Ojulari's in his final year. Like they're gonna bring him back, but he's a cut candidate all off season, right? Like anytime they feel like they can move on, they're gonna move on. Sweat's the guy, but who's the next guy? Who's the other guy? They don't have that, but this draft does have some talent at that. I haven't, to be completely transparent, looked at the free agent list, so like I can't vouch for that. But we also know that free agents, like, you rarely get impact guys. Like, the Josh Sweat was unique in getting a guy like that, right? So, and I know, like, guys will be like, oh, go get Bradley Chubb, but like, is Bradley Chubb gonna want to come and play here? Like, that's
you pay him. All you gotta do is pay him a lot of money,
right? And so, like, you look at guys like K'Lavon Chasen, who was with the Patriots and had a real nice year, right? You look at guys like Boy Mafi, who weren't getting a ton of run at the end in Seattle, like guys like that, right? That could make a little bit of sense for you. But this draft, you could get that immediately at pick 3. That's an option too. And I would say this is either 1 or 2, and you could say 1A, 2A, but like, they got to get a guy opposite Sweat. Like, they got to find a guy that gives them something.
Yes. Yeah, 100%. You need a 1B. Like, great if you can, like, if draft wise, if he's an impact guy who could be better than Sweat, but at least you need a guy that's like the Marcus Golden to Chandler Jones, and they just haven't had, like, you've got to get something. As much as Rallis loves Zaven Collins, and he's good at a lot of things, you got to get better. You have to get more production sack wise and pressure wise like that. We go to off the ball at linebacker, and you could viably remake the entire room, though. With Rallis coming back, it would feel likely that they will go with a combo of Mac Wilson and Cody Simon as the starters, and so it might not be a priority, but you certainly could upgrade there. But they might not. Like if you go with, if Mac is coming back and he's playing Mike, and then you've got Cody Simon and Akeem Davis-Gaither and Owen Papo, like, what do you think the Cardinals do there? Because with Rallis back, I'd say you need to get someone better, but I don't think they're going to go get someone better.
Right. And so that's what the hard part is. I mean, they desperately need to upgrade the linebacker position. And the unfortunate thing is they've had opportunities and they've just not done it. You look at their failed draft picks the last couple of years, and then you look at guys they could have taken. Those things make a difference. There are some interesting old names that have been playing well still, but they're they're old, man. I mean, Alex Anzalone's over 31. Caden Ellis will be 31 this year.
Mario Davis, who's 37.
Yeah. Alex Singleton's over 32. Like, guys that are good football players, that are old. And so it's like, can you do that, right? Like, is that something we can do? I think this is a high priority fit, but man, they've put so much kind of afterthought into it that it's hard to justify going big. It just seems like they always just pick the wrong guys, doesn't it? Like, there's guys that get signed and drafted every year on day 2, 3, or signed, as tier 2 free agents and have huge impacts. And instead you get the Cardinals results, right? So
Akeem Davis-Gaither, interesting name. that has just a little bit of overlap, and that would be Nakobe Dean.
Yeah, Dean would be an interesting one. There was one other one, Quincy Williams. I believe he was with the Jets while LaFleur and Hackett were both there. Now, obviously, on the other side of the ball, but familiarity, like somebody that knows the coaches. So if the coaches vouch for him, that's important too. There are some options, man. That's the one thing we can say. There are some options this year. It's just a matter of like how much do you want to spend? Like a guy that I love that I think would be phenomenal, but you're like, do you really like Leo Chanel with the Chiefs, right? Super athlete, had good seasons with, has had good seasons, hasn't had the chance to be a guy yet. Market values I think like $5 million. Like hell yeah, and you mentioned Dean, market value is $8 million. Hell yeah. Like young guys that have had a little success, have had questions, let's be honest, have had some question marks. But my fear is always this, that they're going to be like, hey, we're going to go get Devin Lloyd, right? And then Devin Lloyd's like, okay, thanks for whining and dining me. Now I'm going to sign this 4-year, $100 million contract with the Jaguars. And they're like, oh, we tried to get Devin Lloyd, so instead you're going to get, and it's going to be Akeem Davis Gaither again. So that's kind of how it's always worked with the Cardinals, right? Like we're gonna go get the big fish, and then we're gonna get you 3 small fishes that don't do anything.
The cornerback position, they've got an interesting position. Sean Murphy Bunting technically is coming back. I don't expect that he will be back. There's no guarantees left on that, but in a room that is devoid of veterans, and it is now your top 3 because Garrett Williams is going to miss a chunk of the season, or it's Will Johnson, Denzel Burke, and Max Melton. What do? You could bring back Star Thomas. We'll see. Like he would be trusted by Nick Rallis, Sean Murphy Bunting. They have to go get a veteran, don't they?
Yeah, man. I think the secondary in general, and that's why I said you could make the case that edge is like 2, but I guess technically it would be 3 because I think the entire secondary needs stuff. And it doesn't mean that it needs like home runs, right? But they need, like, you look at the free agents this year, holy cow, there's some guys. Alontae Taylor from the Saints, Josh Jobs a free agent. He just won a Super Bowl. That wouldn't be bad, right? You've got Jamel Dean. I know the Cardinals flirted with him 4 years ago. There are guys, right? And then and so that position group, to me, more than anything, you just need a veteran presence that can take some pressure off of all of these young kids, especially with how hurt they've been.
Like a Sean Murphy Bunting, who's not Sean Murphy Bunting.
Right. And that's why I said, like, a Josh Jobe would be perfect, right?
Yeah.
4 years, $40 million. You slightly overpay for Joe, but you get a guy that's been there, done it well. Hell, Tariq Woolen, the other guy from, he's available too. Like, all of these guys could make sense and help kind of the Cardinals get through this part of things, without like breaking the bank, but also without cutting off the young guys from being, playing time and stuff. So we'll see. But yeah, it's like, I think it's gotta happen.
And then at safety, they need, so at first glance, Buddha and Rabbit, like Jalen Thompson, why would they re-sign him? Why would they re-sign him? He's had little to no statistical impact for 2 seasons. But at the same time, are we ready for 2, 5, 10 guys to be the 2 safety guys? Like to have 2 of the smallest players on the field to be the 2 safeties in the game. Buddha, you need somebody else at safety. And like someone like if they play a 3 safety system and Rabbit plays a lot, great. But it would be nice to have a true, and maybe Rabbit can do that, Rabbit to play that true deep center field.
Yeah, I mean, and he's not bad at it, but
he's a ball hawk. Like we know that, like from Texas Tech, he got his hands on tons of passes, and he did well with that here. But also his play style suggests more Buddha.
Yeah, and there are some really, really good safety, veteran safeties if they wanted to bring one back, back in this class. But there's also like the secondary in general just needs like the secondary needs everything. That's the problem.
Yeah.
Like
the whole defense needs everything.
It does. Like that's the thing is you have like 3 pieces, right? But like you don't have all the pieces, and that's what makes it difficult. So that's how you have to look at everything.
And then in special teams, they basically need all 3. If Aaron Brewer's coming back, great. Aaron Brewer's coming back. You've got a long snapper. But Blake Gillikin was hurt all year. Can you count on him? Matt Hawk played well down the stretch. But I mean, you need a punter, you need a long snapper, and Chad Ryland. No, they've got Joshua Carty technically on the roster, but if they go into the offseason with only him and they don't bring in another kicker, I will wonder what they're doing. Well, and interestingly enough, how did that work out? That the kicker that they have on the roster was on the Rams last year, and that was a move that they made even thinking of LaFleur.
Yeah, and that's kind of what all of this boils down to is like, how do you remake the roster in the new coach's image? But and this is just a philosophical thing, but what's the biggest problem? Well, the problem is that the guy that made all the decisions for the personnel is still making the decisions, right? So like is he going to be up to like, cutting and again I said this last time and it's just an example. It doesn't mean it's where I'm at or anything, but like, are they going to be like, hey, we got to move on from Isaiah Adams, right? Like, hey, Darius Robinson isn't working out, we gotta like, those are decisions that he has to make. Or does it go the other way where you're like, no, new guys got to get the best out of these guys, and that there's a truth to that, right? Like there is a small truth to that, but the reality is too, sometimes guys they're just misses, and that's what we've talked about with the Rams, the Seahawks, the Niners. They're not afraid to be like, oh, we missed, and like move on and find somebody new, where the Cardinals will be like, hey, we know Darius Robinson hasn't done anything in 2 years, but this year he's going to. And so we're not going to take, Robert Bain, and I know they kind of play different positions. I'm just using an example. We're not going to take Robert Bain, right? Because we want to give Darius all the chances to be successful. And then what happens to the Cardinals? Darius either has a mediocre year that gives you a little false hope or does nothing, and Robert Bain is Will Anderson Jr. 2.0, right? Like that's kind of what bad teams do. And some people say, oh yeah, but it's also bad to give up on a guy too early. I don't disagree, and I'm not saying they have to give up, but at the same time too, you have to allow these coaches to make the evaluation. You can't get in the way because you were the GM that made the pick, right?
True. That's true. And with that wraps up this edition of the Rise of Sierra podcast, Mr. Cardinals Talk on the web. Not too terribly long a show. We'll have more offseason content later in the week as we talk about potential cut candidates. We look at some other things going on and more. But until then, that's Seth Cox. I'm Jess Root. Thanks for listening as always. We'll be back again soon.
Thanks for listening to the latest edition of the Rise Up, See Red podcast. Listen to previous episodes and subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, Audioboom, or many other podcast platforms so shows are delivered directly to your mobile device. Please give the show a 5-star rating and always support the sponsors who support the show. We'll be back soon for the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. Rise up, Red Sea, be red, see red, and of course, rise up, see red.